Chapter 21. Wilks felt great. He sat up in the chamber and looked around at the cold, sleeping forms of the others. He was surprised at the lack of usual side effects, but only vaguely. What mattered was how he felt. He pulled on his clothes and grinned at the warm, easy strength in his body. He felt fucking terrific. But it was more than that. There was something. Absolution, he thought. It was what he had wanted for so long that it had no longer seemed possible. And it didn't seem the slightest bit odd that he had awakened that way. It was about goddamn time. It was like a sense of peace had flowered in him in his sleep, a knowledge that everything was finally as it should be. He laughed out loud as he walked to the stairs. For years he had carried so much. The guilt and the torment of the past had weighed so heavy on his shoulders. And for what? It was gone, released into the void of space. There was nothing to wonder at. He was free. A cool voice spoke gently in his mind, led him through this revelation. Freedom, it said softly. The key. Only one thing left to do. He descended the steps and walked through the APC dock. His feet barely touched the metal. So much of his life wasted, but everything was okay now. He stepped to the door of the containment chamber and reached for the controls, as if in a dream. Freedom, life, release. A flood of warmth and peace washed over him as his hand hovered near the button. The feelings became insistent, stronger. Let it go. Let me go. Wait. Wilks pulled his hand back, suddenly unsure. What mattered? Where was... Let me go! A sense of great power and awful dread coursed through him. He staggered back, away from the door. He was an empty space, overwhelmed abruptly with sorrow, despair. But it was there! His mind screamed. That beautiful calm, that release, freedom. The voice glittered softly with promise and love. All he had to do was punch the button. Wilks crumpled against the wall and wept for the first time since he was a child. Billie stood in the APC dock. It was cold and the lights were low. She was supposed to meet someone there, but she couldn't recall. Billie. The muffled voice came through the wall of the containment chamber. The voice that she had known and loved. Billie, it's me, Mitch. She started towards the door. An inkling of hope welled inside her chest. Mitch? Her voice broke slightly. Yeah, open up, Billie. I love you. She stopped a few meters away. Her smile faded. No, there was no possible way. Billie! Billie! It's Char! Oh God, don't let it get me, Billie! Oh please, no! How could she have thought it was Mitch? Char was in trouble, and Billie was responsible. She ran to the door and reached for the button, but Char is dead. Don't let it kill me! Oh, Billie, don't do this to me! Open the door! You're dead, Billie said softly. You aren't in there. She pulled her trembling hands away from the controls. You're right, said the voice on the other side. And I might as well be dead. You don't give a shit, Billie. It's all about you. Leave me here. None of it matters. It was Ripley. No, said Billie. This was all wrong. Ripley, I care about you. I want to help. Don't you know that? Let me help you. Ripley sounded hopeless, lost. You won't even talk to me, Billie. I thought you were my friend, but no. You would leave me to die in here. No, Why couldn't she open the door? Ripley, I can't. There's something in there. The Queen. The realization hit her full force. She fell back from the door as it all came clear, and a chorus of voices called out, begging, "Let me out! I love you. Please, no!" Behind it all, there was a screaming cry that harmonized with the pleadings of her lost friends. A powerful music, full of now strident chords pounding, thundering. It surged over her like a soundful tide and washed everything with gelid darkness. Ripley sat with her back to the chamber door, the carbine locked and loaded across her lap. The crew had been asleep for 2 days. She would join them soon, but for now she sat, waiting. She had spent the first day alternately sleeping and eating. The idea of ending it had surfaced more than once, and she had considered it more carefully each time. Who would give a shit about one less android? Just blow herself out of a lock. No great loss. She wasn't necessary to the survival of the plan. The others could get by. She had been aimlessly looking through the supply hold when the Queen had screamed, the sound carrying well in the dead silence of the sleeping Kurtz. Ripley had grabbed a rifle almost by reflex and headed for the hold. She'd run into the APC bay, heart racing wildly, afraid the Queen had somehow managed to escape. But everything had been locked up tight. The Queen was crying out and hammering at the walls. But she was pent. The alien mother at her back had been silent for almost an hour now. The tantrum had only lasted a few minutes. Ripley was glad she was still alive. She had ceased to care about much, but there was still something. The bitch behind me is waiting to die, and she's going to take her goddamn children with her when she goes. Ripley wanted to see that, had to know that it happened. Right now, that was enough of a reason for Ripley to live, whatever she was. Wilks groaned as light assaulted him. The chamber door fanned open with a hiss, and the warmth of his pre-sleep womb escaped into the cool air. His entire body ached. He sat up slowly and remembered a great sadness. The dreams. "Everybody stay here," he said. His voice was a weak croak. He coughed and cleared his throat. "Nobody leaves until we talk." The others pulled themselves awake, expressions dazed and sour. Wilks ignored his body's aches as he grabbed his coverall and walked to the door. He dressed quickly in the chill air and waited for the others. Some part of him relaxed when he saw that Ripley was among them. She had dressed quickly as well and came to where he stood. She started to step past him. "Hold on, Ripley. The Queen was sending messages while we slept. I think we need to—" "I don't dream," she said. "Excuse me." He started to reply and thought better of it. He nodded at her as she stepped by. Brewster tabbed his shirt and turned towards Wilks, scowling. "What the fuck, Wilks?" he said. The others looked at him expectantly. He searched their faces for any change, but they all just looked tired and irritable, same as he felt. "Anybody dream of letting the Queen loose?" he said. "Yes," said Billie. Anamoto nodded, as did McQuaid and Jones. Brewster's face softened. "Yeah." "Okay," he said. "We can talk about it over breakfast." "The message was quite powerful," said Moto. "It was like an ongoing advertisement. Look what you win if you open the magic door. It's no wonder you wanted to check with us. You haven't had to deal with it before." Wilks nodded. Billie swallowed a bit of Soypro and looked at Wilks, curious about what he had dreamed. "Wanted to make sure none of us were going to play, I suppose," said Brewster. "Something like that." "Welcome to the Dreamers Club," Moto said. They sat at one table and ate for the first time in weeks. They would be in range of Gateway in less than 20 hours. Billie's pulse quickened at the thought of Earth. Ripley had walked by them on their way into the mess hall as she'd carried a tray back to her own room. Billie wished she would have at least eaten with them. That there were 3 fewer crew members was bad enough, but Ripley was alive. "Hey, where's the boss?" said Brewster. "Why isn't she eating with us?" "Yeah," Tully added. "We need to go over what we're going to do when we get past Gateway." Billie glanced over at Wilks. He laid down his fork. "Ripley is having some personal problems," Billie said. "What kind of personal problems?" Falk asked. Wilks nodded at Billie to continue. She stood. Everyone stopped eating and looked at her. "We need to talk about that," she began. "I'm not sure. Ripley would probably rather not discuss it, but she would want you all to know." She sounded much calmer than she felt. "Ripley is an artificial person. An android. She apparently didn't find out until the medical check she just had, and the news has affected her badly." She stopped and looked around the table. The room was uncomfortably silent. "Ripley has asked that I would take over where she left off," said Wilks. "But it's going to have to be a combined effort. I'm not really the leader type, and..." "How the fuck could she not know?" said McQuaid. "Don't they all know what they are?" "Not necessarily," said Jones. "Ripley didn't." "We trusted her," said Tully quietly. Billie felt a spark of anger. "That explains how she managed the Queen by herself," said Falk. He sounded depressed. "If I had known," started McQuaid. "I wouldn't..." "If you had known..." "Shit," Billie said. She remained standing. The cool dining hall had suddenly gotten very warm. "Ripley didn't know. Do you get that?" She glared at Tully. "She trusted herself. How would you feel? Do you think she did this on purpose?" She turned to Falk. "The last thing she needs is bigotry from this crew." She was losing it. Billie took a deep breath and forced herself to sit down. "Jones is better qualified to answer questions about it." "Not really," said Jones. "All I can tell you is that she's as close to human as I've ever seen, and I think Billie is right. Ripley's a good leader." He stopped and looked vaguely embarrassed. The others absorbed the information. Moto nodded slowly. "Okay," said Wilks. "The more important issue here is that we're getting closer to the station. and I think there's a few people there who would like to have a little chat with us." As Wilks discussed some possibilities, Billie calmed herself. Tully and Falk both looked at her in ways she thought were apologetic, although McQuaid still seemed pissed off. She was surprised at herself, but not as much as she would have thought, even a few months before. The outburst had felt good, and she thought it might even have helped. Ripley hadn't done anything wrong. It was distressing that any of these people could overlook her strengths. Billie yearned for the kind of courage that Ripley possessed. She would need it to help Amy, if Amy was still alive. She refocused on the discussion, heart pounding.